We're now getting word that the U.S. Senate vote to end debate on the START treaty may be delayed until tomorrow. The agreement between the United States and Russia calls for cuts in both countries' nuclear weapons. It's one of President Barack Obama's top foreign policy priorities. He's now trying to get Republican lawmakers on board. Some of the GOP are worried about the treaty's impact on missile defense. But as we've been telling you this hour, yet another Republican says he will vote for passage, virtually guaranteeing the passage of the START treaty. Senator John Barrasso is a Republican from Wyoming. He is on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He joins us now live from Capitol Hill. And Senator, thank you very much. I know you have concerns that the preamble of this START treaty limits our missile defense systems, but given Senator Isaacson's yes vote, which we've just reported is imminent, it virtually assures passage. How will you vote? Will you vote to ratify the treaty?
I plan to vote against ratifying the treaty. The job of the United States Senate is to advise and consent to the president. The Russians yesterday warned that the treaty should not be changed and cannot be changed in any way. Well, that would turn the Senate into a rubber stamp, and I am not willing to place that stamp on this treaty because I think that in the eagerness of this administration to have a treaty, I think they've failed to address some of the things that should have been addressed. And one is our ability as a nation to defend ourselves, and not just against Russia, but against nuclear weapons that may be coming from North Korea or Iran or other foreign powers that develop and obtain nuclear weapons. That's where my concern is, because this treaty in the preamble ties our hands in terms of being able to defend ourselves.
And I realize that since you and I last talked on Saturday, your amendment to that with John McCain was defeated. But Senator McCain now has a brand new separate piece of legislation that he has introduced to try to allay your fear and other fears. It would essentially not allow Russia to stop deployment of our missile defense systems in Europe. And as I understand the construction of this, it's actually an amendment to the resolution, which would therefore not require renegotiating the treaty. Does that satisfy your preamble objections?
I support this additional McCain amendment. I think it's a watered-down version of what we were trying to accomplish over the weekend, which was not adopted. This has to do actually with intercept missiles on the ground in Europe, and I think we need to include that. So we're going to have to see how that proceeds. I talked to Senator McCain just a few minutes ago about that amendment, and I support his amendment. Still, under this START treaty, our ability to verify what the Russians have, in terms of trust, would verify. It relies much more on trust than it does verify. So do we need to have a treaty with the Russians? Yes, but I believe this isn't the correct treaty.
This treaty, though, is correct according to some very prominent people, many of them Republicans. In fact, the first President Bush supports it. Every living Republican Secretary of State, George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, Condoleezza Rice. It's supported by our NATO allies and our current military leadership. I mean, isn't that pretty persuasive to you?
Well, Condoleezza Rice had a wonderful editorial in the Wall Street Journal where she said they need to decouple our ability to defend ourselves from our ability to have offensive weapons. She said they should have essentially adopted my resolution, my amendment. Henry Kissinger talked about the failure to deal with tactical weapons where the Russians have us outnumbered 10-1. And so did other secretaries of state, previous secretaries of defense, who called this treaty the dog that didn't bark, because we failed to deal with the tactical weapons for which the Russians have a huge advantage. So I think we could have done a better job in putting this treaty together and negotiating from strength.
All right, Senator John Barrasso, thank you so much for dropping by our camera there in the rotunda. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Sure.